Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Nastasia from Stape and really happy to have you all here. Now let me give you, please, a quick intro. What will happen in today? No, then previous slide. No. So today's session is all about real use cases and all about Stape Store, how you can improve your tracking with Stape Store. And now the next slide, thank you. So in a moment, I will hand it over to Dan, our speaker. Also, we have our tracking experts here for the Q&A. So feel free to drop your questions anytime in the Q&A box. And now the next slide. Amazing. It's like we are testing new approaches. So now what will happen today? First, we will give you a quick intro, an overview of what Stape Store is and how it works, and how you can benefit from it. Then we will jump into live demos. We'll cover 3 key use cases where Stape Store can help the most. First one is measuring profit on ad spend. Second one is around building your own CDP to enrich event data. And the last one is about achieving full revenue tracking accuracy. In the end, we will have the Q&A, so you will also have a chance to discuss some questions in detail. And now the last but the most important, not the least slide, from my side, this webinar will be recorded and you will receive an email in a few days with the recording, with written guides, with all the links to all helpful resources that we will mention today. Yeah, and that's it from my side. I think, yes, we can start because everyone who wanted already joined. So let's jump to the best part. Then it's time.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Sorry. Let's do a quick sound check because we had some issues the last time. So if anyone could please confirm that you can hear me well and I can continue in the same manner.
Yes, I hear you well. I see in the chat pluses, and also I see the question about the slides after. Usually we are not sending the slides, we send in the recording, and because like 90% of the webinar, it will be live demo, but it's a great point. We will also share the slides, yeah, after the webinar.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay, amazing. So today we're talking about Stape Store and its applications, pretty much. So before I jump into live demo, there's a few just introductory slides to the thing. So server GTM plus storage equals love. The reason for such a statement is that server GTM and GTM in general is a real-time tool. You never had any persistent storage associated with it. For the geeks out there, template storage was never a good enough of a solution. It wasn't practical for most of the use cases. So now we finally have it. So what it is it's a NoSQL database that obviously allows you to read, write, and synchronize your data from your tagging infrastructure, from your tracking infrastructure, right? It's fully built into Stape, which I'm going to show you, and you can see it on the screenshot here. So you don't have to authenticate. There's no service accounts associated with it. If you attempt to write or read from a Stape store while hosting on Stape, that will just happen automatically. You don't need any additional credentials or anything like that. So yeah, it's available in every single container that we offer. The blueprint of it, just for some visual aid, is fairly simple. We have a storage right there. Right there, talking to your server GTM. Again, you can read and write, and you can then utilize that data to send it to any destinations your tracking infrastructure does. So think Facebook, Google Ads, any ads cabinet you're sending signal to. Why would you want this? And this correlates with some of the use cases that we're going to talk through today. So you can recognize anonymous visits. Essentially, you can recirculate the customer data that you have identified once. So we will discuss that a little bit. Essentially, think a person did a purchase, they returned back to the website anonymously, you know who they are. You can access some historical data, so you can enhance your conversions with, let's say, lifetime values of the customers, maybe their order counts, some specific metadata that you might be using. And Also, it's as simple as sharing information in between different requests, right? In between different hits from your server container. Let's say you have multiple clients, like we will have GA4 and data client, for instance, and you want some data shared across those two data streams. So the store would be the way to do it. And last but not least, report profits over ad spend, right? So this is a hot topic, I believe, lately. The idea is to any ads cabinet, instead of pushing the revenue of the conversion, you are pushing your well calculated profit, right? The easiest example would be your margins on, let's say, a product if you're an e-commerce store, something like that. Again, the fact that this all connects with SGTM gives you the capacity in that real-time tool to utilize this pre-stored data. And yeah, just for the anecdote, the big star of today would be these two things, the writer tag and the lookup variable, which we're going to utilize heavily to go through our use cases. With that, I will switch to the live demo. So let me drop the slideshow and real quick give you a few disclaimers. So my weapons of choice for today would be obviously Google Tag Manager. I have a server container in front of me. We will not use the web container much, although I have it handy here just in case. There's a dummy Shopify store that I have here, right here, where we're going to test most of the stuff. And that is pretty much it. So the disclaimer is I have my Shopify tracking already configured. We have covered this subject in previous webinars. So the assumption here is you have your basics done and you are tracking your purchases, you are tracking your view items, add to carts and such, and you are doing that through the server container. So within today, I'm not going to be covering that setup. We have pre-made Shopify templates, which will be shared in the follow-up, which you can use to achieve the sort of state that I'm starting with today, right? That being said, we can switch to our first item on agenda, so profit over ad spend. In principle, as we discussed already, the idea is you are pushing, instead of pushing revenue value of any conversion that you're reporting, you're going to be pushing the profit value. The idea is once you get a report from, let's say, Google Ads or anything else, you're going to get numbers which represent your final earnings, right, rather than revenue before the costs and everything. So the biggest issue, non-technical, I would say, the biggest sort of hurdle with profit over ad spend is always product feed. So in principle, the way we do this is we will match every single product ID that we're going to deal with. We will match it to a record in our Stape Store to pull the margin value of it. And I'll go through it in more detail. But this requires some hygiene and some timely updates of that product feed or whatever structure you're going to use for saving the margins on your part, right? Because this only makes sense if those numbers are relevant, if they are updated, if they are actual. I have very, very dummy examples here. We're going to use something more complex, but again, just for visual aid and to give you the idea of what's going to happen. We have some records in our Stape store, I'm in my container, which have, all of them have an ID and they have a margin value. We're going to match this product ID to a margin and then essentially replace the value parameter with the margin value in any sort of report. Here's a more hands-on example from Shopify and how you can do it on Shopify. So I have my 3 dummy products here. I'm in the product section on Shopify. I can export this as a CSV, actually. Let's do this. Give it a second. Now it will be emailed. Well, anyway, once it gets emailed, and if we open it with something like Google Sheets, for instance, that's our entire feed. We have all the parameters from the feed. There's names, there are SKUs, there's prices and such. So because Shopify doesn't have a native field for margin or anything like that, I will just go in and add a column here. I will name it margin. And for the purposes of the demo, I will say 5 on every product. This will be then easier to demonstrate and to calculate in our results. So again, for demonstration, we're going to assume the margin on all of our products is $5. I'm going to download this as a CSV. And we will go back to Stape. There's a option here to upload a CSV. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to select the file we just created, hit upload, and give it a second to think, which results in 4 documents created. Each of the documents has some sort of hash here. You don't need to mind it. The gold is inside, so we have these parameters. And in here, we're going to reference, most likely, an SKU. So we have this hat SKU because this is a hat product. So I went ahead and did some mock IDs. And we also, somewhere here, I think it's sorted alphabetically. So we have our margin here, the margin of 5. Perfect. This gives us enough information to pretty much continue with the task at hand. So let's switch to our server container and let's see how we can do this for, let's say, Google Ads, a purchase on Google Ads. So first and foremost, we need to be looking up the margins, right? How you can normally do this is we will go to the variable gallery in SGTM. We are going to look for store. I'm going to find Stape Store lookup. For now, let's just use this to show you the idea. So I will go to variables. I will create a new instance of what we just added, Stape Store lookup. We don't have a document pass in this specific instance, right? This is the name of the document to the left. This has no sense for us. We don't know what it is. So we are going to use query instead. And our query is going to say, we are looking for a document where a field with our ID equals the ID of our product, which means we have to grab that name real quick. I think I already looked it through. So let's use variant SKU, this. We're just going to put this into the query. So we're going to say, find us a document where variant SKU equals to our product ID, or rather product SKU, right? In order to do that, let's create a variable. So I'm going to do event data. We're going to assume we are having an items array from GD4. So the first item, and let's say item SKU, I believe. I'm going to go back here and tweak it if needed, but for now, let's just do that. So essentially, this variable will look in our Stape Store for a document where variant SKU equals to our item SKU, and it's going to return to us. Yes, this is what we're going to return because we don't want to return the entire document. We want to return the margin field. So I'm just going to do it the way we named the column. Let's add a name for this. Let's do store lookup margin and save this up. So let's do a quick, let's do a quick test. Let's launch the preview here. Let's open our website and let's send some sort of an event. Let's do the t-shirt. Let's maybe do add to cart. That should be enough. Okay, here's our view item, for instance, on a G4 hit. In our event data, we have the items array and there's an item SKU, right? So if we look at the variable we created, let's find it, store lookup, it has returned 5, right? This is what we were looking for. So switching back here, it found the document, this with head SKU and variant SKU, and it returned the margin value from this document, which if we scroll up, the margin is 5. So this is working, right? Which means we could go ahead and apply this logic to, let's say, a purchase conversion that we have in Google Ads. So by default, again, we're not done, but by default, I would then say, okay, I want to replace the value, which is empty in this case, which means that automatically the tag would parse the value parameter as you would expect, but we are going to replace this with our store lookup margin, which returns a 5. Now, some of you may already know the problem with this. The problem is that we obviously can have more than a single product within our purchase. So what I just did wouldn't be entirely correct and would only work for a situation where you have a single product. But not to worry, we have a quick solution right here. Let's go to variable templates again, Stape Store, and we have Stape Store margin lookup, which is a variable built specifically for the purpose that we're dealing with today. So let me go ahead and create that instead. I'm gonna go new, Stape Store margin lookup, and there's a bit of more information that we need to put here, right? So field containing product ID in your Stape Store, we're going to say variant SKU. Field containing margin value in your Stape Store will be margin. Then we have a selection where do we pull the ID in our event data. So we're going to say item SKU as we did before. The difference between this and the variable we just used is inside the code of this, the variable will loop through your items array. It will search for margin of each product. It will also account for the quantity of those products within the item array. So lookup margin, I don't know, let's name it all items just for clarity. And let's save this. Let's go ahead and actually put it into our purchase conversion right away. And then we can simulate a purchase and show you guys that it's actually working. So lookup margin, all items, not touching anything else. This is a normal purchase conversion, firing on a purchase event. So save and yeah. Let's relaunch the preview. Let's add few products to cart and see what we get. So I'm back here. I actually already have two of them in the cart, but these are two t-shirts, not interesting. Let's do one t-shirt and a couple of hats. There's a Easter egg for you. Okay, so we now have three products, two of the hat, one of the t-shirt. Let's go ahead and check it out. Let's give it some data. It's not Ontario, I think. It's the United States. I have some dummy information here. Bear with me. I think this will do. All right. So this is a test payment, so we don't need an actual credit card. 1, 2, 3. And let's go ahead and pay. Amazing. The order is done. We have purchased 3 things. Let's see what hit our server container. This is it. So if we check the event data real quick, we have 2 hats priced at 16, and we have 1 shirt priced at 25. Let's look at our variable. Our variable has returned 15, which is proper. If you remember, we've assigned 5 margin, like value 5 margin to each product. We have 3 products in total, so 15 would be the correct answer. And if we look at our Google Ads purchase tag, you will see that the value we have pushed there equals to 15. And that would be pretty much it on the subject. So here we are successfully reporting margins to Google Ads on a purchase conversion. Obviously, you don't have to stop at this. You can do the same procedure for other conversions. You can do that on add to cart. You can do it on begin checkout, view items, whatever it is you do. You also don't have to stop at Google Ads. You can apply this to Facebook or any other reporting you do. And the last trick to show you here is to save you some requests to that store would be to use a transformation. So if we plan to assign margin instead of value to multiple tags, not just a single one, it makes a ton of sense to use transformations. So I'm going to do the augment event. So it adds or modifies event data values, and we're going to say replace value with our lookup, this, all items, for certain kind of tags, right? And we will include, let's say, Google Ads purchase, and just for the sake of demo, let's do Facebook purchase as well. This will be our transformation value lookup. And there you go. What we've achieved with transformation is instead of doing two separate calls to Stape Store to find our margin, one for Google Ads, one for Facebook, we will essentially only do the one because the transformation will query the data, augment our event data, and apply it to the tags that we want to fire with a, with a value. So the more tags you envision being part of the thing, the more sense it makes to use a transformation than just reference a value directly, right? So in the case of transformation, let's close it up. I would then need to go back to my tag and actually switch it back to just the normal value like this, because the replacement is taken care of by the transformation. So again, in rough terms, high level, this is the profit on ad spend and how you can do it. Again, utilizing Stape Store. The biggest sort of focus here is on keeping this updated, keeping this with proper data, with actual margins, or however you want to call that, actual percentages that you're making on top of the item cost. Yeah. So again, if there's any questions on that, if something needs to be covered in voice, I'll be doing that after I'm done with the entire thing. So I think this does it for profit on ad spend. Again, this shows you conceptually what you can do in Stape Store. You can imagine some other applications as well. Like, it's not a very practical one, but I've seen cases where it wasn't Shopify, it was some convoluted, self-made store, and they did not have enough product information on the front end altogether. There was like only item ID. So by same principle, you could pull some product data based on ID if it's otherwise not available on the front end. But with margin, of course, you don't want to expose it anywhere, visible. So Stape Store, is a handy tool to use that. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking about profit on ad spend. I think this is covered well enough. Our next topic, our next use case was mini light CDP. I don't quite like calling it a CDP, but in principle, we're going to use Stape Store to stitch some information together. And this time we're going to write to Stape Store in real time, not only pre-populated, for our use cases. So here's what we're going to do. Let me close the preview. We are going to do the very simple and basic scenario of enrichment, where we're going to reuse the data that I expose on purchase for my other events. And this is how we're going to do it. So since I already have my purchase tracking here with the data tag on the web container, and that already passes all the user data and everything, I can easily go to my server container and do the following. We are going to go to templates and search for the writer tag. So let's type store again, Stape Store writer. Let's edit. And we're going to go to tags and create this Stape Store writer. I'm going to trigger it on a purchase event. Again, for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to do the data client one. That's not a requirement. You can do whatever. Again, maybe in your situations, it's not going to be a purchase event. This also makes sense for some lead events or pretty much any kind of tracking event you have that exposes some user information that is useful to you going further. So I'm going to say store save PII, and we are going to document key. For the document key, I'm just going to go ahead and use email. That's the easiest. No, not correct. I apologize. Let's populate data first, and then I'll talk to you about the document key. So we want to pull all the data, so it makes sense to not put it into store as a separate fields, but there's a possibility here to just add an object, which we're going to do. So we're going to save user data object, and let's create a variable for it. Right here, we're going to do event data. And our data tag is going to create this object for us, parsing the event data. So event data, user data, hit save. And we're going to put in a document pretty much everything we have on the customer, everything that comes in the user data. Now, we need to assign a document key because the next time we're going to attempt to pull this data for usage, we need to reference it somehow, and it needs to be I call them stitching edge agents, right? A shared data point, which will be shared across what you store and what you get, in an anonymous request. So this may be very, very, very specific to your particular situation. A lot of times you can use things like GA4 client ID, for instance. Keep in mind that might change eventually if they clean the cookies and everything. So this is not 100% foolproof. On Shopify, though, we have this lovely cookie which Shopify sets for us, which is a first-party cookie, which is also set by Shopify itself, which makes it very, very persistent and resistant to all of the ITP and all the things you guys love. So underscore Shopify underscore Y set on our domain here, .stape events. You can see it expires in 2026, like a year from now, and you can expect it to be unique, especially across users of your store. So we are going to reference this cookie, and we're going to use it as a document key, as our stitching matching sort of mechanism. So let's create a variable real quick to grab that cookie. This will be cookie value, picking up underscore Shopify underscore Y. Let's call it cookie this and put it as document key. So real quick, I'm going to demo this, but in essence, what's happening, we're on purchase event, we're writing to Stape Store, we're creating a document named as the value of the cookie, and we're putting a user data object inside that document so that we can use it for further. I'm also going to do merge document keys. This is so that we don't overwrite anything. No, actually, I think for our case, we should overwrite. So scratch the last part. Okay, let's save it and let's see what happens. Let's run the preview real quick. Let's make this purchase happen again. Actually, I'm lazy, so I'm just gonna do it. I'm a special kind of lazy, so I'm gonna do it the long way. Sorry for that. Okay. So this is still me. This is still Delaware. So you have to see all that. This, let's do a card number. Something, something. Okay, bought those pens. There's my email. There's me, Dan Stape. There's some test address. All the fields are filled in. We don't have a phone number, but that's quite all right. Pay now. Okay, we've made our purchase. Our purchase should land in our server container. This time we did it on the data tag request. So here's our event data. We have our user data object that contains all of the goodness here. And we have went ahead and wrote it down into Stape Store. Our tag has fired, and we've saved it under that cookie key. Document key is empty though. Interesting. Let's take a look. Yeah, we somehow have not pulled the cookie. So let's take a look. Oh, because this is purchase and this is Shopify and this is Sandbox. All right. Okay. Quick amendment. Since this is firing on in a sandbox, we want to send the cookie explicitly. We do not expect it to surface in our headers here. So if we look here, incoming request, and we look at the headers, there's no cookie header because that's Shopify for you. So we are going to go to our web container, find our purchase tag, the data tag, and add a data point to it. And we're going to use that. So in here, we want to say Shopify underscore Y, and we are going to give it a variable, which will be the actual cookie again. So plus first party cookie, Shopify underscore Y, this, save it. Okay, now with our purchase event, we're going to be receiving what we need, right? Again, if you want to dive into this subject further, we have articles on how to debug Shopify Sandbox and everything. They touch on the subject. They will explain to you why cookies are not passed normally and why we have this checkbox here for the normal kind of cookies you normally care about, Facebook and what have you. Since this is not something we normally process, wasn't added here, so I have to do it manually. Save this, let's submit, let's actually publish this so that we have it live. Webinar, all right. Okay, now we can expect things to actually work. Let's go ahead and delete this just for cleanness sake. And let's do our purchase again. Let's do a head this time. Gonna add it to cart, do here, check out. Right. Let's do this and pick our Delaware back. Yeah, okay, 11. Pay. Okay, this time we should have what we need. And in our event data, there should be that Shopify thing. Yes, here it is, which means that our tag has fired as intended this time out, and we have not changed the document key. Okay, guys, I'm gonna cheat because I don't want to waste your time, and let's just make it as if it has worked. The reason it hasn't worked because I sent it like this in event data, but my tag here still references the cookie value, right? So wrong variable. Let's skip that because this is a demo. We can actually refresh, see what has been written, this, and we cannot change the document name. All right, let's add a document like this, right? And again, demo. So let's do this real quick manually. Let's add a field. Let's add user data. It's gonna be an object. Add. Slide that object. Let's use email address for show. Have then Stape IO. Just to show you the principle, I'm gonna fix the tag on the go as well. Okay, all right. So let's fix the tag so that we have it for the next run. We wanna say this is event data. So we wanna create another variable real quick. Let's copy an existing one. And this is our Shopify underscore Y. All right, okay. So now this is complete as expected. Again, I apologize for the blunder. So let's save it. So now in our Stape Store, we have this document, again, or rather this one, fuller one, where we have this cookie value and we have our email address. And through the same principle that we used for margin, we're going to use it for user data enrichment. So here's a quick and easy demonstration. Let's create a lookup variable. Let's do Stape Store lookup, and we're going to do not query this time, but document pass, because we know that document pass. So we will always reference the Shopify Y. Since we're doing it on page views, which are not running in Sandbox, we can actually do the cookie. Again, if this is confusing, ask a question. I'll walk you guys through this again after I'm done. So we're going to look at this document and we're going to pull from it our user data object just by key. So this will be our lookup user data. You can probably gauge where I'm coming at. So the next time, let's relaunch preview. The next time I am, let's say, on a home page and there's a page view event received. If we look at our variables, my user data is now returning my email, which we have stored, right? If we add more stuff here via these means, like we discussed, it would pull more, of course. So now this is in my event, this is in my variables. And then again, it will be a nested object with a lot of things. So what I would probably do is I would suggest to use the transformation. And I glanced at the Q&A real quick, and I think there was a question about requests. So I'll talk through that while doing this, right? The way we bill for Stape Store is any request to store, be it read or write, is counted as your normal request, as your tracking request. So there's no specific rules, nothing on top. It's just another request that is counted towards your subscription threshold. The reason I'm showing you transformations rather, is exactly to avoid you guys doing redundant requests that would eat up your subscriptions and raise your costs and everything. So again, since we're going to use that user data in multiple tags and we're going to be pulling individual multiple data points from it, such as email, phone number, etc., we want to centralize it kind of in a transformation so that the lookup happens only once and not for each tag, right? So let's do something like no, let's say enriched data. So the transformation will add an event data parameter called enriched data, the value for which will be our user data lookup, which will be this. So let's call it transformation, user data. Let's apply it to whatever tags you guys want. Doesn't make sense on purchase, right? Maybe some lesser conversions. I don't know if you want to do every page view. That seems redundant to me, but maybe some add to carts for example. Let's also do it for Google Ads, for instance. Right. Okay. So we have created with the transformation this object called enrich data. We know the structure of it because we already tested it. What remains for you to do is to just create a bunch of variables. Again, event data variables. Let's do event data, and we would say enrich data dot email address, for instance. And this will be our enriched email address. So you can then go ahead and use that variable and a bunch of others you would create, phone number and such, in the tags that you've applied the transformation to, such as right here. So on add to cart, for instance, I have something mapped, but I don't expect there to be user data on add to cart because I don't have any login on my store. So for instance, this email is going to be enriched data email address. And then following the same principle, you would create other data points, whatever it is you're storing, and reference it like that, which will save you some requests. But here you go, you've enriched an anonymous hit with the data that was previously exposed to you on a purchase event. Right. I think I'm gonna be done with this. Again, feel free to ask your questions because I have yet another case to cover, and that's also not the smallest one. So the last use case is described in this article, how to achieve 100% accurate tracking on Shopify with SGTM and Stape Store. Again, don't dwell too much on Shopify. There will be some specifics, which I'm going to show you, but the principle, as anything we did today, stands for any site, not even necessarily in e-commerce. If there's some other, 100% accuracies that want to reach on some events, you can do it like that. Here's a general overview. We're going to be relying on webhooks as a compensatory mechanism for our normal tracking. So if there are any purchases that do not reach our server container for any sort of reason, some sort of bug, some mishap in our tracking implementation, something that user has done to prevent that from happening, we will be receiving a webhook from Shopify and reporting in my demo to Facebook off of that rather than the normal client-side hit that you expect. That way, the majority of your purchases will be reported for normal means, data layer, web GTM, server GTM to destination, but the ones that have not entered that pipeline will be reported from off of a webhook, right? And we gonna, via the Stape Store, what we're going to do is we're going, first of all, to store some of the cookies because the webhook will not contain that information, which is crucial to your attribution. Second is via the Stape Store, we're going to know at any point in time whether we have already tracked this transaction because we're essentially going to be storing transaction ID plus some sort of a status. So let's go through it real quick. There's 5 steps described. I may change the order, but still. So setup event tracking as usual using web and server GTM containers. We have that done. We have demonstrated it a bunch of times. Write marketing and or analytic cookies in Stape Store and have them available as a fallback if the purchase event has not reported off the web container. There's a script here. This is specific to Shopify. And this again has to do with how the sandbox stores cookies. So I'm just going to copy this. You could do this via GTM. We would have to do a bit more shenanigans, just like I did right now. We would have to pick up those cookies explicitly by hand, send them over. I'm not going to do that. On Shopify, we can utilize their custom pixels, which will help us on this journey. And I already have it created, but let's just dump the copy. So now in here, we're sending an event called stored cookies. We're sending it to our server container. We are sending it on checkout started event. This is Shopify semantics. This is essentially your begin checkout. The reason for this is that this is closest to the purchase as we can go, making it so that we can expect that the cart token is not going to change because they're already about to buy, and that their cookies are not really going to change. If they do, they would go through checkout again, which will, prompt us to override them. So in here, the cart token is here, FBP, FBC, Facebook browser ID, Facebook click ID, just for example. Store cookies as an event we can leave. The only thing you have to fix here is, oh, I already did it. Okay, wonderful. Is your subdomain, right? So in the example, in the article, you obviously have sstexample.com. I have replaced it with my subdomain, and this is good enough. This is actually saved, so I can close this. This is connected. Okay, let's see that actually happening, but let's also configure our Stape Store tag to save all that, right? So let's create a tag. We already have a template, Stape Store Writer. We're going to do it on a store cookies event, right? This is what we've put in our pixel here, store cookies. Data client will parse this. This will be your normal event name. So on this event name, what we're going to do is we're going to write into a document the FBP and FBC pretty much, right? So let's do that. Let's create variables real quick. This will be an event data. So I'm going to do event data FBP like this, FBP. Oh, we already have that. Amazing. Okay, well, let me just use them. FBP and event data FBC for the click ID. Now for document key, I'm going to use that card ID. So let's create a variable because I definitely don't have that one. Let's copy something existing and let's use the card ID. Event data card ID will be our lookup key, will be our document key, right? So whenever we receive this event, store, store cookies. Again, don't want to dwell too much on that. So when this event hits us, which is going to happen every time we go and trigger begin checkout, we are going to write these cookies into our store. And let's actually publish this. And let's trigger that to happen and to see it in store, and then we'll continue over. So in here, I'm also going to open the network and filter by data because we can catch that request here. So yeah, let's a t-shirt again, add it to cart and go to checkout. Now give it a second. Here's our store cookies event, which has fired off of our custom pixel, and it carries the card token, the FBC, and the FBP. So error number one is we need to change this card ID to be card token. So that's a typo. Card token, card token. All right. Okay, but meanwhile, we can check the store. We should have, yes, this, not with the proper name, again, because I messed up on a variable, but you see the principle. We would have a normal ID here. Let's actually go ahead and try and trigger that again. So I'm gonna go back. I probably want my cart cleaned up. So let's remove all that and refresh. Okay, so I'm gonna do pants this time. Edit to cart, go for checkout, at which point we should have, might not catch it, but no, we should have fired. Yeah, we fired an event. So here's our cart token. So if you look into the store, something is wrong again. Love it. I haven't published the container. Again, I apologize for all the blunders. This always happens whenever you try to demonstrate something. So bear with me for another minute. We're going to make it work finally. So again, let's repeat the exercise. I'm gonna clean all of my cart cookies so that the checkout actually does fire. Let's add even another product, a hat, checkout, here. Let's wait for our event. Our event has finally occurred, and our tag has again fired with something wrong. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Card token, right? Okay. Let's see. Card token, event pass. Everything is correct. Why have you not worked? This is my user data. This is our old stuff. Oh, okay, let's try again, I guess, right? Let's double check what we have here. ED card token. When we're sending a request, let's look here. Customer events, send cookies. What are we sending? Card token. Okay, init data card ID. No, this should all work. And we have it here. Store cookies, store cookies. Is it store cookies? Yes. Okay, want to do another test? Probably let's. Actually, this may have happened because when you publish a container, the server container has a little bit of a cache if it's already running. So maybe let's try again, one last time. If not, we'll dance around it, we'll mimic it, and we'll complete the demo without all of this. Okay, I'm
Then if
cleaning my cart.
if
Yeah.
not, you can always reload your laptop. It always helps.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you for that. I feel kind of frustrated because of this, but let's make it actually work. Checkout. Again, let's look here. Event should fire. It did fire. Everything is peachy as we would expect it. What's happening here? There you go, finally. So this is our card ID, and there's our Facebook click ID and Facebook browser ID done correctly. Now, let's go back to our article and finish the thing. So we are now storing the cookies on checkout, and now we need to, every purchase event reported from the web is stored in Stape Store. That's actually easy. We shouldn't have any blunders here. So let's go ahead and create yet another Stape Store writer tag. And what we're going to do is we're going to fire it on purchase. Let's say GA4. I'm going to do data tag because it's easier for me, but then again, depends on your actual situation. So what we want to write here is I'm going to use the transaction ID and I'm going to say tracked yes. So this is very, very store transaction ID status, right? So whenever I receive a normal purchase event through our GTM means, I'll create a document with transaction ID. I will say tracked equals to yes or true, whatever you want to do. Let's do yes for now. Making it so that my store has all the information, has the records on what purchases I have already tracked today. We're going to use that not to fire off of webhook in a redundant, kind of a scenario. So if we caught everything on the web, we'll just use that because it's ultimately better. If that hasn't happened, we're going to use the webhook. By referencing this stuff, we will know which transaction has occurred or not occurred previously. Right. Going back to the article, what remains is to set up that webhook, right? So we want purchase webhook sent towards our server container. We can do that multiple ways, but I'll just show you the easy way. The easy way is you go to our application in Shopify, and if you're an e-commerce store that we support, other apps of ours do it as well. If it's something we don't support, you can create a native webhook and pretty much achieve the same behavior. So this option will allow webhooks to be sent to your server container. We want to give it a proper path. So I'm gonna do HTTPS. I have my subdomain, cornucopia, Stape events, and I would do /data by default. This is an endpoint for our data client. And we've said purchase webhook, and let's hit save. There's an inherent problem with this because you never know what's going to reach your server container first, the purchase that you can catch on the web or this webhook. In order to mitigate that, rather, we're going to use a power-up called request delay. I'm gonna enable it. What it does is you can send any sort of hit to a specific kind of endpoint, which will delay it surfacing in your server container. So it's your subdomain /delay /the amount in minutes. So let's save that so that it's enabled. Let's have the container redeploy. And this means that for this endpoint, we're going to do delay. Let's do 1 minute because that's good enough /data. Same everything, only this webhook will arrive 1 minute later from the occurrence, giving us enough time to already have to track it on the web, right? And to write into our Stape Store that the transaction has actually already happened so that we can then double check it when firing off of webhook. Right, so I'm gonna go ahead, save this. And the last thing we need to do is when we have any purchase. By the way, the webhook is going to send us a normal purchase event with a GA4 schema, items, value, currency, user data, and everything. What it's not going to have is attribution data, right? Which is why we stored the cookies previously. And for the demo, I did FBP, FBC. But of course, you can apply that approach to any other cookie you need, your GA4, your Google Ads, Gclids, and everything. So what we want to do now on purchase event, and let's actually see what the article suggests, right? So we are writing those cookies as we already did. We are saying track true. I've said yes, doesn't matter. We've set up a webhook with a delay. And so verify if the order sent via webhook has already been processed, right? So we are going to be checking that tracked data point we're storing with a lookup, and we're going to put it into a trigger. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to create a new variable. This will be our lookup again. We're gonna just reference the document by key, which will be transaction ID. We'll be pulling, let's say FBP or FBC, doesn't matter. For the sake of the demo, let's do FBC. So we can do lookup FBC based on the transaction. Oh, no, I apologize. This is the wrong thing. No, we wanna say tracked, right? And we wanna say lookup transaction ID status or something like that. So this will return to us the tracked yes or no from for the transaction ID in question. So we are going to apply it to our purchase trigger. I'm going to do this plus transaction ID status contains yes. Now, sorry, contains no, right? So we only fire a tag if we haven't previously tracked this transaction. So if our lookup returns no, or rather false, however you organize it, or 1 or 0, doesn't matter, we will fire it. So I'm amending the trigger, so we're firing purchases on purchase events only if transaction ID is no. If it's something else, it's not going to fire. So let's save that. And from here on, the kind of the cycle is pretty much closed, right? If you are to receive a webhook, let's go ahead and actually show you that real quick. Give it a sec to launch the preview. We just redeployed the container, so there's like a new pod being created for this. Give it a sec. Right, and we can go ahead, send requests manually, and so that we catch that webhook, we can use our preview header. Turn on now, I know what I'm doing. Yes. Give it a second again to redeploy so we actually see those hits. And again, I'm going to remove delay for now, just so that we can see it and save us all some time. But obviously you want it there for the live sort of situation. So let's send the test webhook. Should have been sent to this container of ours. Let's actually try again. This can be caused by this. We just enabled the preview header, so it might not, be as quick to kind of apply it. So let's try again. Oh, there they are. Purchase webhook, refund webhook. Okay, lovely, right? So here's your purchase webhook. It has all the goodness you're used to: currency, value, tax, shipping, items, and everything, and the user data. What it doesn't have, obviously, being a webhook, is any cookie information. And I also lied to you a little bit. It's purchase underscore webhook. So let's do a few things to address what we did here. First of all, let's forget about this. We're not touching the normal purchase. The normal purchase will always fire. We are going to have a parallel trigger, which is going to be purchase webhook, and let's call it thus purchase webhook. And in here, we're going to apply that condition. So look up transaction ID status contains, let's say no, or rather does not contain yes, because that's the only data point that we're writing, right? So we write yes on a match. If we haven't written, there will be nothing. So does not contain yes. Good enough. Purchase webhook. Now, since the demo was for Facebook, let's copy the existing Facebook tag. Just copy it, and let's say Facebook purchase webhook. We'll be sending the normal purchase event. We're just going to change the trigger of it to be our purchase webhook. We don't need that transformation. I'm going to remove it. But so the user data, the everything is the same. The mapping is not different because, again, because of how the webhook is built. What you want to address is the click ID and the browser ID, which we've stored, right? So they are in here in user data. We will pick the click ID and the browser ID. So into the click ID, we would put our lookup. Haven't I created that? Okay, let's create them real quick.
Then may I jump in? I see that actually it's almost 6 p.m.
Yeah, I'm almost done.
Yes, can you guide us? Yes, there
Yeah, guys,
definitely.
I need a couple of minutes just to finish the thought. This is the last step, and essentially we will, we will be done, and I will do that Q&A that I promised.
Yeah.
So just bear with me for a couple more minutes. So this, we're going to, again, we're going to do the card token. We're going to look for, let's say, FBC, for instance, right? This will be our lookup FBC. Looked up by card token, return FBC, yes, and we will reference that as our click ID, right? So we're overriding it explicitly, having looked it up. And then we're going to create the same thing for FBP real quick. Let me just do that. My browser is frozen. Did I lose you guys?
No, all good. The connection is
Okay.
stable. Yeah, all good.
Okay. Just my GTM going nuts. That's okay. This is the most issue-heavy webinar I've had so far, I think. Let's go like this. Okay, so copy this FBC, copy and do the same for FBP. You would do the same exercise for any sort of cookies you already, you store. So we do that. We go back to what apparently was not saved. So let's copy our purchase tag again. Let's apply the correct trigger, purchase webhook, and override those two parameters to kind of finish the thing finally. So the click ID and then the browser ID. Here, populate those with lookups, and you're good to go. So again, what's going to happen is it would be hard to demonstrate right now, but just in principle. So we fire normal purchases, we store the transaction ID of them, and we say that, no, this is safe PII, sorry, this, and we say that, yes, this is tracked. Then we pull that track status and we apply it to our webhook trigger. So it will only fire if it's not yes, right? So then let's fix this. It's not a copy. Do it like this. So then you're receiving webhooks for all of your transactions, but you're only activate tags related if you haven't already tracked that transaction. Ultimately, what it brings is you can do 100% accuracy in terms of revenue in any given destination because you're relying on server to server signal from your source of truth rather than only on the web tracking. And again, there's an entire article on how you can do this. And since we're almost out of time, I think I'll just switch to Q&A if if there's no objections. So let me try and do that. Open questions. What are these cases to the Stape Store restore variable? The Stape Store restore variable, it's a little bit more complex to explain, but essentially the restore variable does read and write operation in one go. So if you have a set of data such as PII, let's say you have Dennet, Stape.io, my phone number, my first name, last name, and such, but then suddenly you receive some information like suddenly you have my zip code or anything. It would search, let's say by email, find that set of data and append in the same hit, append the additional parameter to it. So you can manage your data like that and you would have less entities in GTM to achieve more or less the same result. So that's how the restore variable works. How much does using the lookup table Stape Store increase the request build by Stape? Well, yeah, I already kind of walked through that, but each hit you do to Stape Store, be it to write or to read, will count as a single request towards your subscription limit. So, which is why you want to be smart and use transformations and use this approach I showed you where you store objects like we did here, right? Rather than storing individual fields, because then you can look it up once, pull the entire object, and then break it down into whatever you need, rather than doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or whatever queries, therefore using your requests. So do use transformations. Not a question, just really impressed. Well, amazing, thank you. Why should the data client be more performant for Facebook events and the G4 client? Well, again, Andre's reporting there. Thank you. But the general idea is the request pattern of data client is just less recognizable out there in the wild, unlike GE4, which is very commonly used. So that's the main reason, right? It will be blocked less. Also, there's quality of life improvements, like I showed you, for instance, the sandbox in Shopify doesn't let you pass the cookie header. In data tag, we have a checkbox that will pull all the needed cookies, add them into the event data, and all the tags you have on the server side are already listening for that as well, right? One other last thing I can mention, GA4 doesn't handle objects. If you send a object, any object other than items array, you will receive a string, like a stringified version of it on the server container. So you have to like parse it and you have to do some additional shenanigans. Bottom line is we use GA4 only for Google products. Anything else that's like more agnostic, Facebook, TikTok, what have you, we would always use data tag for it. It's so nice to say, oh, Louis, I second that. Shopify is, Shopify is funny like that, but you kind of get used to it. But hey, I appreciate the sentiment. Does it change anything if you use a tag to extend cookie and insert the cookies LK into the tag, cookies lookup into the tag? It changes and it doesn't change. You don't need this much effort as we've went through today because you would just store it in cookie, so you can always just reference the cookie. The problem is cookie can be deleted. Cookie can be removed by the customer and everything. And if you have some matching, again, sometimes cookie based, but if you store it in the Stape store, that's only available to you. Nobody else has nothing to do with it. So probably a savvy user would definitely remove a cookie that contains his personal information, right? That wouldn't look right to them. They wouldn't, however, touch the underscore Shopify underscore Y because nobody knows what that is in the first place. How do you address duplication with both webhook purchase and web purchases firing on the same page? Well, this is exactly what I just discussed. You store the status of the transaction tracked on the web. Then when you receive a webhook, you look up that transaction ID. If you didn't track it already, you let the webhook go and trigger your tags. If you did, you don't. Therefore, you don't overreport. I have enormous doubt that purchase webhook sell and step out. You send purchase when the payment is approved, when the order is placed. It sends purchase the moment a order is registered in Shopify. You can test that, but again, if you have some doubts about our specific webhook, you can do the native webhooks in Shopify. You can use Flow app, that's a native app, and you can play with it however much you like, and it will be, it will then fire at the moment that you desire. I understand what you're talking about because other payment providers, this depends on how Shopify treats it. As far as I know, the guys from the chat correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's a problem on Shopify specifically. But if you have seen it empirically cause the issue, right? Like webhooks fire before the payment is done, well, you have to kind of address it a little bit differently. Perhaps you then want a webhook from your payment provider rather than from Shopify and do some additional stitching to have your data together. Listen, if also like please reach out to our team, maybe we can give you some more practical advice on your specific particular case. How long is data stored in Stape Store? As of right now, it's stored indefinitely. We're not cleaning it up. We are working actively on improving it, so there will be TTL, time to live, eventually, but right now is just indefinite. You can delete it manually if you want to. Since webhooks will cover all conversions, why don't we just track the purchase events via webhooks entirely? Well, first of all, you can. Nobody's stopping you from it. Second is, most of the platforms, Facebook, among other things, will tell you, hey, we ideally want the tracking of the server and the web as well, right? So it makes sense to still rely on the normal means. Don't, look up the store each time. So save you some requests. And again, inherently, the requests that originate from the web are just more data rich, right? You have all the cookies, you have all the everything, and you don't need to do these stitching efforts. So that's the reason. But in principle, hey, you can definitely. Is there an API for Stape Store? Yes, sir. There is an API for Stape Store. If you look at the Stape API in your profile, you can populate and you can read with an API, definitely. Webhook can match 100% for WooCommerce website. On WooCommerce, our application will send you webhooks with cookie data, so you don't even have to do that last step and enrich the cookie information. So yes, definitely, WooCommerce or any other e-commerce, so long as you can have a webhook as a source of truth, as a 100% indication that a purchase has happened, the principle applies, the approach you can do. Assuming proper user consent obtained, was sending all purchase events via webhook to manage E4 still raise any concerns regarding? Well, assuming proper consent is gathered, well, no issues. Again, if you're, I haven't went into those details, but you can on Shopify where we stored the cookies, you could also store user consent like that. So that by the time they do a purchase, you know their original choice, and you can also make a decision alongside that dimension, right? Whether they have consented to you reporting that or not. So again, use the same principle. When you're storing the cookies, also store their consent decision. Any real-world data and percentage of FBP, FBC cookies caught by Stape, writer being attached to webhook, because in theory, the purchase didn't fire on the front end, then the script recording cookies to the Stape store will also fail. Well, in theory, but again, the purchase conversion is much more subject to limitations and such compared to a single page view. You're right in principle. Again, if you want to expand this further, we just don't have the time. You could do some redundancies. Store not the cookies, store query parameters. So when they land with the FB gclid, whatever, don't rely on the tag to set that as a cookie. Go ahead and store it in the store right away. Uh, Pick some stitching, ID and everything, and use it like that. Then by the time you have a webhook, you would also have the FBP, FBC. So again, sky's the limit. I've noticed a trend with G4, especially that more and more traffic is getting assigned to direct. Is there something we can do to improve? Hey, we have an entire article about that. I suggest you just comb through our blog. If you end up having still having problems, reach out to support, reach out to our teams. We'll try to help out. There's a ton of material on Google. I just don't want to, be talking for that again. All right. I think I have covered everything in the chat. So is there anything else? Just shoot. What about using Cookie Keeper? Can we just use the Stape user ID instead of a Shopify Y cookie? No, you can't, because the webhook is not coming from a user browser. The Stape user ID on a webhook would be something else. You would not have a match, right? Because the user agent sending the webhook is not the customer, it's Shopify's backend. I think they actually call it Captain Hook or something. So it wouldn't apply. You would not get a match. You would never stitch a webhook to your original cookies. And again, underscore Shopify underscore Y is just a good example on Shopify. You don't have to resort to that specifically. It might be something else. Always a pleasure. Oh, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir. Tell more things like that. Okay, I think we're 15 minutes over time, so it's about time we stopped. So thanks everyone for the attention. And as we said, there will be a recording. There will be a follow-up with a bunch of materials. You're going to get it most likely next week. Not to correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, stay tuned. Thanks everyone, and I'll be seeing you.